you've decided to put up some sweet corn at peak season, and so you can enjoy it through the winter. We're going to freeze this today. I'm going to show you exactly how to freeze this so that it will be super sweet come winter. So hopefully you're picking it up at the farmer's market or you're growing it in your own garden. And so when you're selecting your corn, you want to make sure you're getting it really, really sweet. We're going to get this in the freezer within just a few hours of picking or selecting at the farmer's market. You're going to poke your kernels and make sure they're just bursting with beautiful corn, white corn milk, and then even take a taste. If you're buying it, make sure it's sweet and just beautiful. Okay, so now when I buy my corn, I'm not concerned about that end being filled out. I know that everything we read says that that needs to be completely filled out. The kernels should be nice and plump at the end of the corn. I personally don't like that. I like for my corn ears to be a little bit immature. For instance here, this cob on the left is a little bit, it's obviously very filled out, very mature, but I find that the kernels are more tough, and I like a tender, sweet, crisper kernel, so that's what I like to get. Now this right here is worm damage. You don't want to buy corn obviously that is brown and mushy on the end. That means there's been a worm in there. You can cut that off if you still want to use it. I don't buy bags that have that in there. Now there will probably be a stray one. If you buy a bag of corn, you might find a couple of those in there. We're going to get started freezing this corn, and don't shuck it first. Let's go ahead and get our station set up, and I want to show you exactly how we're going to do this. Processing station, you need to have your casserole dish with a couple of really good sharp knives, and your casserole dish needs to be at least 9 by 13 and 2 inches on the sides. If you have something a little bigger, that's great, but you do need that height on the sides. A butt pan is not going to work for this unless you just want to have a really messy kitchen. And also a cookie sheet's not going to work because the sides are not high enough to kind of keep everything neat and tidy. That's what we're going to try to do, because when you have really fresh corn, it will be a mess. It will just go everywhere. And so we're going to try to keep this as neat as we can. You also need a dish towel, and we'll line that with paper towels. This is where we're going to put our corn after it's come out of the boiling water, so we want to keep it dry, and that we can change out the paper towels to help keep it dry. You need a pot, and you should have a lid for that as well. Also, not pictured here, you need a good pair of tongs. So for the knives, I like to have this little knife on the top. It's a vintage. It's an old knife called a quick cut. It's just one of my favorite knives to use for cutting kernels of corn. And you may have a nice, good, sharp knife that you like in your kitchen, and that's what you should use, a nice, sharp knife. The one below it with the black handle is something that I use to kind of skewer the cob of corn, and this helps me hold it and then also turn it when I'm cutting the kernels. And you'll see how that's done in a few minutes, but I do not recommend that you use an ice pick or anything like that to skewer the corn, because you need to be able to turn it. So it needs to be a blade, whatever it is that you use to skewer the corn. The vintage knife here, I think I bought that at like a secondhand store or something one time. It was in a box still, and it's just an old knife from the 1960s. You can still get these like on the internet, eBay, and those kind of places, and I've just really loved using it. They have a lot of really good little vegetable knives, like paring knives and stuff too, that are neat colors, and it's just vintage. It's kind of a neat little knife to have around. So if you like it, just take a look on the internet. Again, it's called Quick Cut, and there's all kind of little knives available. Alright, so now the second station is where you need to have the canning funnel and some scales. The canning funnel, I like to keep it in a little dish and lined with a paper towel, because again, I'm going to try to keep it neat and clean. And then I also have some scales for measuring my bags of corn. You can also use a measuring cup if you don't have scales. We just want to make sure we know how much we're putting up into each bag. So the most important thing that I would like to stress throughout this video is that you have got to get that corn processed. Once you've picked it out of your garden, or you have gone to the farmer's market and found some really sweet, beautiful corn, you need to make sure you are prepared to put that up and in the freezer immediately. Okay, do not bring it home and then put it on the kitchen floor and think you're going to do it the next day or something. You cannot do that. We are going to have some very sweet corn in the winter, and this is how you're going to get it. Okay, so my rule of thumb is that corn, after I have shucked it, it needs to be in the freezer bag in about 30 minutes. So I can do that comfortably. I can do about 12 of them comfortably in 30 minutes. So that's as much as I shuck, and then I go back and I shuck some more, 12 more. I process corn about 5 times in order to do the whole bag, which is 60 ears. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you'll go ahead and shuck your 12 ears of corn, and then you'll need to go ahead and get the kids involved if they want to do that. Mine don't last too long doing it. They get pretty bored of it pretty quick, but it's a good time to expose them to that kind of thing. And then you can remove the corn silk, and I like to use a nail brush to do that. It comes off pretty easily that way. And then we're ready for our next step, which is actually blanching it a little bit, and we are going to put it in our freezer bag. Bringing our unsalted water to a boil and setting the timer for 45 seconds. And then I'm going to put in 3 ears of corn into the water, and this is as long as we're going to cook it, 45 seconds. Okay, I'm going to turn it gently just to make sure that all of the kernels cook. And I know that this does not sound like a very long time, especially what I read on the internet. I think I've read a lot of things about you need to cook it 4 minutes, 5 minutes, I've seen even 6 minutes. Folks, if you want tough and chewy corn with no sweetness, that's what you need to do. But I'm just telling you what I do every year. I like a tender, sweet, crisp corn. So I'm going to show you how I achieve that. Now, my corn does end up having a little bit of the milk in it, which is great for me. I love it, but it's not a creamed corn at all. But it just is wonderful, I think. When you remove your corn, you'll put it on a dry paper towel, and which is on top of a dish towel, and I like to keep those towels changed out so that it stays nice and dry. And the reason I'm doing this and I'm not putting it into an ice bath, which is what you normally see when you're blanching something, is that I've just cooked these just a little bit, and now they're going to cool off perfectly fine here because I'm going to cut them right off the cob. Okay. Most importantly, though, I don't want to reintroduce more water into the corn, and that's what would happen if I were to put it in an ice bath. The only liquid that I want in this corn is what's coming from the corn. I don't want extra water. So the corn will be nice and dry this way, and so we'll continue to use the same water. I do like to keep it clean because during that boiling process, some of the finer silks will loosen from the corn. So I'll just gently remove those, and I continue to use the same water. I will add more water to this. I'll keep it covered and turn off the stove while we cut the corn. Okay, and that's what we're going to do next. It's time to start cutting. So I am going to secure my casserole dish with a little towel to kind of keep it from sliding around, and a shelf liner would also work very well for this. I like to nestle this in the corner of my cooktop, which is a ceramic cooktop. And so we'll start by inserting my knife into the cob of the corn. I insert that into the base of the corn, and the tapered end is pointing down, and that's where the top of the corn was. Okay, so I'm going to go in about 1 inch into the corn, and this will be my last check for silk, any kind of corn silk that might have been left behind from the boiling process. I'm going to go ahead and pull those out now, and then I'll go ahead and start cutting. Now I'm going to cut about 1/2 to 2/3 of the kernel, and my knife should just slide right through it. If it's hard to do that, then you're probably going a little bit too deep, but that's kind of a personal preference too. I'm more of a creamed corn kind of girl. So, and when we make creamed corn in the South, we just shave off the top half of the kernel. So my corn is not creamed corn, but it is kind of in that consistency and texture. Okay, and so I'm going to take my back side of my knife at a 45-degree angle and come in and get the germ out. That is definitely something that you do when you make cream corn. So that also is optional, but it makes a nice little sauce with the butter when you go to reheat it. Okay, so I'll come back in and get the tapered end. That's my final step. Now when you're angling your corn, this is what's going to keep it neat. If the milk and the little germ and splattering all over your kitchen, you need to go down more like a 30-degree angle. Sometimes I'll get a cob that's really juicy and it's making a mess, so that's why I angle it so that it goes straight into the casserole dish. You notice that I'm also cutting on just one side, the far side of the casserole dish, and cutting into the long side. This is just to help keep it neat. So I'll pop off my cob with the back side of my knife. I'll never touch the cob. At this point, I think if you're going to use a knife to kind of skewer the cob, this would probably be where you would cut yourself. So be very careful whenever you're working with these knives. So I just pop it off with the back of my knife and I am good to go. If you have another tool that you think would be better to skewer that cob with, especially you guys out there who have toolboxes, go digging. I'm sure you can find something else that's probably going to be a little less dangerous. I am comfortable using these knives like this, but I do think that I know that a knife is not intended to be used this way. So there could easily be an accident if you do this too. So I think maybe a long, like a flathead screwdriver might work well with a long flathead on it. I don't know, there's several things to use, but I know that you need to be able to turn it. So it needs to have kind of like a blade inside of it, something flat, so that it can be turned. Periodically, you're going to need to clean your knife because it's going to get sticky and the corn is going to stick to it. So make sure you do that. And now we'll give it a good stir and make sure everything is nicely incorporated in the corn, and we're going to bag it up. Okay, I like to bag up my corn in a little casserole dish lined with a paper towel, and I'll use my canning funnel. Now, if you don't have a canning funnel, you can just fold over the sides, the top sides of your bag. This is a 1-quart freezer bag, and you want to fold it over so that you don't get corn in the zipper. Okay, so we want to make sure we keep the zipper areas clean so it'll seal up nicely. And I'll just go ahead and fill it up with my corn. I want to make sure to get all of the good stuff in there too, so I'd like to use a rubber spatula to do that. And I'll replace the funnel back in the area where I'm bagging because I don't want to put it back in the corn, because again I might get corn on the outside of the funnel and it might compromise the seal on the bag. So I'm going to go ahead and weigh it, and I like to weigh mine between about 14 and 16 ounces. And so once you have it weighed, if you don't have a scale, you can easily just use a measuring cup. You just want to make sure you know how much you're putting up. And then just kind of roll the air out, and then we'll go ahead and force the rest of it out and seal it up. And we'll flatten it out and put it in the refrigerator to cool completely before I put it in the freezer. Okay, make sure you do this step. And then I'll put it in the freezer and let it freeze, usually like overnight, and then the next morning I can go ahead and seal it up one more time, and I'll show you how I do that. I have a vacuum sealer that I use, but I'll also show you how you can do it if you don't have a vacuum sealer. So I like this little vacuum sealer, and it does a really good job. We just want to make sure to remove the air, and we're going to give one more layer of protection to the corn that we've worked so hard to store and put up for the winter. I like to freeze it first because sometimes the vacuum sealer will suck out some of the liquid. It's so strong and it makes a mess. So that's why I freeze it first before I do this step. Now, if you don't have a vacuum sealer, you can use a 1-gallon Ziploc bag and just go ahead and put your corn in there. I'm not sure that you'd even have to freeze it for this step, but take a hard plastic straw and stick it in the corner of your bag. Zip it all the way almost closed. Give it a good suck. Pull the air out, and then finish closing it, and it actually does a pretty good job of removing the air. Okay, so there you go for that if you don't have a vacuum sealer. So I ended up putting up about probably 35 pounds of corn. I think I had 3 bags of 60 ears, and I will enjoy it. Okay, so now if you want to reheat it, let me show you how to do that. Just go ahead and thaw it completely in just some warm tap water. It takes about 30 minutes for it to thaw completely. And then you will warm up about, melt about 1 to 2 tablespoons of butter to your liking. And then you can add your corn. This right here is not going to take more than probably 1 minute. You'll add your salt and pepper. Then you're going to toss around your corn just to kind of make sure you've warmed it thoroughly. And then you can put a lid on it and remove it from the heat, and you are good to go. Alright, now if you're going to use it for soup or something like that, a couple of years ago I used it for chowder, a lot of chowder. I was experimenting with a recipe. I put it in last and let it just melt into the chowder. So I like to add it last to soups and that kind of thing, because you do not want to overcook it or it will be chewy and tough. So do not do that, and you'll have some beautiful corn this winter. I hope you're able to try this method of freezing your corn, and thank you so much for watching, and have a beautiful day.